how to keep your emotions in check when the journey gets hard. There are certain moments in life, okay? I don't really think any of us are exempt from this. One thing is very important to understand is it's very easy for us to overestimate how much control over our lives we actually have. All right? However much control you think you have over your life, you're overestimating that level of control. Right? The only thing you really have control over is what you do, is the actions you take. But the outcomes that you get from those actions, you have no control over. Right? There are no guarantees. Basically, life is a game of probabilities. Okay? The more you do something, the more likely you will get your desired result from it. Right? And the opposite is true, meaning the more you do something, the more you will get unfavorable results from it. It kind of cuts in both directions. So I give you an example. Let's say you want to be a business owner. You want to build a business. You're an entrepreneur, right? Oh, also, let me know if the music is too loud. So let's say you want to build a successful business. You're an entrepreneur. The likelihood of your first business being a success is highly unlikely. It's possible, but highly unlikely, right? Your second business that you start after the first one has pretty much went belly up on you. The chances of success are a little bit higher, but still pretty low. Sometimes it's going to take you your third or fourth business that you start in order for you to be really successful. Now, if you're really wedded to your first business that you start, it can be a real struggle because that thing could be destined for failure right out the gate, right? It could be, may not necessarily be, but it could be. This is just the risk we take, right? The probability is sharply against you. However, the kicker is if you stick with that business for long enough, if you believe in it strong enough, and you are willing to fail for 2 years straight, 5 years straight, even 6 years straight, maybe hell, maybe even 10 plus years. This first business, you refuse to give up on it. So you stick with it for a whole 10 years of failure. That thing can be very successful in the 11th year. It's possible. This is what I mean about the probabilities, right? It's kind of like a game of roulette. You can land on red, you can land on black. You usually, typically, mostly land on red or black. However, the more you spin the wheel, your chances of hitting double zeros and landing on green becomes more likely. The more you spin the wheel, the more your probabilities increase of you hitting double zeros. This is kind of how it works, right? So this is, you'll see people who, they're not particularly gifted, they're not particularly like really talented, but they're very relentless, meaning they will just keep trying and trying and trying and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and just be absolutely stubborn and just, I'm just going to push ahead no matter what. And eventually they break through. This is actually the key to breaking resistance, actually. I posted a video yesterday where basically I demonstrated the 3 levels that your life works on, right? So you have this bottom level, which acts as like a support. That's your bottom floor. You have the middle, which is pretty much like it's comfort, but you trade in comfort for a lack of progress, right? And then there's that higher level of resistance. And then if you break resistance, you hit a whole nother level of life, right? Pretty much it's an upgrade. So I wanted to show y'all too right quick. If y'all saw this video, right? And let me pull. In that video. By the way, put a 1 in the chat if y'all watched that video. If y'all didn't watch it, y'all not going to know what I'm talking about. Right? Oh, oops. Oh, wait. Let me try to pull it up here. Pull up that whiteboard. See this right here. This is what I was talking about. All right? So we have the higher high. We got resistance, and we got the starting line, and then the middle. Right? So, this is really important to understand, okay? This is probably like one of the most important things to understand. I did a whole video about this because this is a thing like you really got to watch out for, right? So, let's say you start a business or you want to create a body transformation. It doesn't really matter what it is, but typically this is going to be your starting line. You start from here. And the goal really is you have these ebbs and flows up and down until you get to this middle area. This middle area is going to feel comfortable because it gives you some breathing room. You can kind of relax. You can take a break from all the work you've been doing to really get up off the ground from this starting line. However, if you don't continue to push from this midline, you get too comfortable, you stay here for too long, you run out of steam, and then you head back down to your starting line. This is very important to understand because a lot of the times what happens is people do this. This is what people do. They move to here, they stay here, they come back down here, then they move back here, they do this here, they may do this here, they come back here, and then they end up here, and then they have to go and do it again, like this here. All right? This is what most people do. The reason why this is dangerous is because the same way you can hit a higher high up here, you can hit a lower low, which means you can actually drop down from your starting line to a worse position. So let's say you are on a weight loss journey. And so basically you wanted to lose 100 pounds. If you want to lose 100 pounds, weight loss of 50 pounds is here. So you've lost 50 pounds and you stay here. What happens is after you hit the 50 pounds, you kind of stagnate here. And when you do that, you can drop back down to here where now you've gained back the 50 pounds. And then you try to make that push back up to losing the 50 pounds, but you stop here, reverse, and then you drop back down. And now you go from having to drop 100 pounds to now you got to drop 125. And then you got to work real hard just to get off the 25 pounds that you gain in addition. And now you're back to your starting line again. This is also a lot of the times what happens to people, right? Understanding this chart is really important to understanding like your emotional issue. It's a real emotional battle and it can be really confusing on the journey of life because this is what happens to people. That's why it's very important to kind of plot it out on a graph, right? So how to keep your emotions in check. The reason why you want to keep your emotions in check is because if we go back to this graph here, this graph can also be a graph of your emotions. All right. So a lot of the times, if we feel really motivated, we want a goal bad enough, we want to achieve it bad enough, we can skyrocket, come straight out the box, boom, 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 and hit here. Okay? And you get a little comfortable. Now the comfort, you got to be very, very wary of the comfort. Because the reason why is because this starting line is where you have a lot of desire, a lot of passion. You're ready to go. You're sick of being where you are. You're ready to get out. So boom, then you hit this midline. Now this midline feels like relief. It feels comfort. It feels good. It feels almost like euphoria. Like, oh wow, this is going really well. So remember I talked about on that way to 100, dropping 100 pounds, you drop 50 pounds. Boom. Oh man, look at that. This is working. And we get real comfortable and we kind of trade sideways here in this midline. If you get too comfortable for too long, this becomes your new norm, and then your starting line is basically a very easy area to get rejected back to. So what you really want to focus on is this comfort should be a thing that's short-lived because we got to go here to resistance. Resistance basically is, let's say you drop to 50 pounds, you get to 75 pounds of weight loss. 75 pounds, you're at resistance right here. Now, a lot of the times what happens is you hit the 75 pounds and life creates a real grind until you get rejected and you start to trend back down towards that midline again. And very emotionally, it's very important to understand how this works because basically at resistance, you get the food cravings, you get injuries, you get job loss, you get things just seem to work against you. You're like, why does this feel so difficult? Why is everything going wrong here? I'm stuck at 75 pounds of weight loss, or even 80 pounds of weight loss. My goal was 100, but I'm kind of stuck here. I can't get past here. And it's very frustrating. And you stay at resistance for long enough, you get it off, and you can come back down here. Now, if you come back down here to this zone, comfort zone is the emotional eating. This is where you start to just run out of steam on the journey. You're not really pushing for it that much anymore here, right? You ran out of steam. You didn't gain all the weight back and return completely to your starting line. You're kind of maintaining a little bit here. You're still in the fight, but not really making much progress. Now, if you can stay in this area for a year, you can stay in this area for 2 years, right? In this midline can be just like a prison that you just stay in for a really long period of time. And you can stay here for so long that you just stop pursuing this higher high, right? Because if you get rejected off of resistance hard enough, you come back here. This is your emotions, okay? So emotion number 1, strong ambition, motivation. Number 2, midline, euphoria, comfort. You have a choice to make here. Do we stay in this midline or do we continue to push? If you continue to push, you hit resistance where everything feels like it's working against you. This is how it feels. You feel like the universe hates you. Something's happening up here. Everything's going wrong. There's one problem after the next. You know, you feel attacked. And then eventually you run out of steam. You feel defeated. You come back here. Now, once you come back here, you have a choice to make. Do you re-engage with the journey? You muster up the aggression to push past, back to resistance here, and re-engage with this fight again. Now here, when you retest resistance again, now here, this is fear, this is anger, this is anxiety, there's a lot going on here. This is how the emotions work out. There's a fear of being rejected from resistance, and then there's a fear of being back at this midline, and there's even more fear at being at your starting line. There's a lot of fear down here. And if you get rejected and start heading back down this way, that fear starts to get real the more close you get here, and the fear turns into hopelessness, right? So basically you get rejected, fear, and then hopelessness and stagnation back at this midline again. Okay, this is decision time. You have to make a decision, because if you're at that midline and you don't make a decision, life will make a decision for you. And the next thing you know, you're back here at your starting line again. This is how your emotions plot out on the chart. The reason why you need to see this is because when you put your emotions, your emotional journey on a graph like that, you can see it play out in real time. You can see what it looks like. And then you can use that as a reference point to see where you are. So your starting line would be, if you're on a weight loss journey, where did you start? At the very beginning of the journey, what was your lowest point? What was your heaviest weight? And then what is your ideal weight? At what part was the biggest sticking point? Right? Because your biggest sticking points are your midline and resistance, which is above your midline. So for example, let's say you were 300 pounds and you had a lot of success and you dropped 50 pounds to your point you reached 250. Maybe it was 265, maybe it was 245, maybe it was 230. And then resistance was like 215, maybe even 200 pounds. But your ideal weight, your higher high, may be 175, 160. It may even be 150, depending on your, whatever numbers you're pursuing. Take note of those numbers. And the numbers can also be a range. It can be like a 15, 20 pound range, and maybe a 5 or 10 pound range. This is why memory is really important. So at this date, I was here, and then what were the things I was experiencing in my life? What was happening? Right? And then you think, well, what threw me off? Was it a death in the family? Was it a car accident? Was it an injury in the gym? You hurt your back, whatever the case is. It was a medical diagnosis. What was it? right? If you succumb to food addictions, things like this, it's probably because you stayed in that comfort zone. Because the food addictions typically happen in that midline, right? You had a lot of progress, but then things are getting a little difficult, but you feel comfortable. Like, I gained some weight. I can eat. I can ease up a little bit. I can have a cheat day from my diet plan here and there. Or, I need to take some time off from my workouts. Or work got really busy and whoop whoop. That midline is typically where you're not that dialed in on what your true goals are. You're not like really on the journey. You become more pacified. Resistance is basically where you just feel like everything is cutting against you and you have a lot of anxiety about it. Right? There's a lot of anxiety and fear at resistance. There's a fear of backtracking. There's a fear of, right? So now if we go back here, all right, we know midline is decision time. So here you make the decision from the start line, boom, midline. This is decision number one. Do we go straight up? Or do we make no decision and stay here? Which if you do that, the next decision will land you here. Whatever decisions you don't make will be made for you. It's very important to understand that in your life. If you are not actively pushing towards your higher high, you will drift back to your starting line, or even below your starting line. Progress is a very deliberate effort. It doesn't happen accidentally. You don't progress through your life without trying to do it. It doesn't work like that. Right? It's like swimming in the ocean. The tide will carry you if you're not actively swimming against the current. And swimming against the current is, I mean, it's just a big part of life. So here, decision point, up to resistance. Now at resistance, this is another decision. Because what's going to happen is you're going to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right? You hit resistance, you get rejected off of it. You hit resistance, you get rejected off of it. And every time you get rejected off of resistance, it becomes discouraging. Right? So if you let the fear set in and you become discouraged, boom, you head back down to here where it's decision time again. So when you feel discouraged, you have to understand, well, it's probably because I hit resistance. So discouraging, when you're discouraged, that's the time to apply pressure. When you feel all the fear, that's the time to press forward. That's the time to dig deep and press forward. Because if you don't push past the discouragement, if you don't push past the fear, you're going to get rejected all the way back down to here, and then you run the risk of getting rejected back down to here again. All right. This right here, so when I talk about these three stages, there's something called a head and shoulders pattern, right? People who are like stock traders or whatever the case is, they know what I'm talking about. So basically, the head and shoulders pattern is here, shoulder number 1. Here, number 2 is the head, and here is the shoulder, and then back down. Okay? So this is your first push, and you come back down here. This is your hardest push. If you get rejected off of here hard enough, you come back here, and then you can't really attack it the same, and then you're back here. All right? So that's a head and shoulders pattern. All right? I'm going to keep this up, and I want you to really, when you get time, get a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or whatever the case is, and draw this out in your life and plot out your points where what was your starting line, what was your midline, and what was resistance, and what is your higher high. Right? Take some time to plot that out in your life. You can apply this to an income goal. You can apply this to weight gain, weight loss, strength gains. It doesn't really matter what it is, right? You can use this chart or this graph for any area or journey in your life. Okay? It applies to pretty much everything. It's like this universal thing that you can apply. All right. Those checkpoints feel like certain emotions. So if you feel fear, you have to respond to fear with focus and aggression. If you feel discouraged, you have to... Basically, that's not the time. When you feel discouraged, that's not the time to let up. Okay? Because that makes the rejection makes it stronger. So basically, what you have to do, you have to fight past that. So when people say, oh, what do I do about food cravings? Well, you're real close to resistance when that starts happening. And this is the thing too in a diet plan. Let's say like a raw vegan journey. If you eat fully raw for long enough, there will become a point where the food cravings start to get really aggressive. You want to have savory foods, you want to have warm foods, salty foods, you want to go on vacation and eat at a resort or a restaurant, you want to go out and eat with friends, you want to do all of these things that you used to do back in the day. If you capitulate to those food cravings and eating out and all that type of stuff, that capitulation will land you in that middle zone, right? That'll have you diddling in the middle. You go on vacation, you're eating some junk food here and there. You're like, well, I'm still eating the fruits and I'm still eating the, you know, I'm still plant-based. I'm still. But you done crowbarred all this other stuff in there. You go for restaurants, you eat with family, maybe you eat some candies, your bag of chips, whatever the case is, right? You're maintaining your diet, kinda, for the most part, but you've added in some junk. You've added in some restaurants. You added in some things there, right? And that's dangerous because if you capitulate from that zone of comfort, that midline, you're diddling in the middle too much, you're going to mess around and get rejected all the way back to your starting line. And when you get rejected back to your starting line, it happens really fast to the point it doesn't really register to you in your mind. You don't catch it. So if your starting line was, let's say on your weight loss journey, your starting line was 315 to 320 pounds, and you went and lost weight, you shot back, you got down to 265, somewhere like that, and then next thing you know, you're at 285 on your way back to 315. And you're like, oh shit, what happened? So rule number one to really counteract the emotions, that emotional battle, is to know where you are on the graph. And that creates context, and the context gives you a higher level of awareness of what's happening. All right. For me personally, in my journey right now in my life, I am at resistance. Okay, and I have retested. This is like my third time or so retesting resistance, and it's really given me a run for my money. All right, and so this reminded me. So I'm like, you know what? Yeah. So when I took a break from all the live streams and things like that, that was me getting rejected off of resistance pretty hard. I got rejected real hard. I didn't return quite to my midline, but I got close. And the awareness of that caused me to do that video about diddling in the middle, and my aware of that caused me, you know what? I got to set up the next live stream and get back on. Right? You're going to have to fight. You lean into resistance because the thing is, it takes a lot of aggression. It takes a lot of persistence to push past resistance. It takes a lot of force. It's hard. It's very hard to push past resistance. Now, the thing is, me coming on here and doing this live stream, doing different things in my life, that's just going to allow me to drift away from my midline and back up to resistance. This isn't a guarantee that I'm going to break resistance. This is going to, in order for me to break resistance to get to my higher high, I am going to have to go through an incredible level of discomfort and persistence. I'm going to have to reach deep and lean into a part of myself that I've never leaned into before. Not like this. It's going to require a much different effort, a much greater effort. It is going to take an ideological shift. That's what it's going to take. So you'll know if I broke past resistance and hit my higher high when I get back on here with y'all and I tell y'all different things that are very different, than not very different, but different enough to know. When I get back on these live streams, I start telling you things. If you see a change of character, if you see a significant shift in the content, you're gonna be like, oh, he's operating at a higher level. If the content shifts more from being about diet and training to more about mindset, you'll know why. Right? It doesn't matter how good your diet plan is. It doesn't matter how how good food selection is. It doesn't matter whether or not you show up to the gym or your workouts. It matters, but the thing that matters most is your internal psychology. That's why the mindset stuff is so important. That's the one thing that's going to govern your success. You can put 20 people on a plan, and that plan could be like the best plan ever. But out of all those people who are following those plans, they're going to get very different results. And the reason why is because what you are thinking alters your results. It alters the effects that things have on you on a cellular level. All right. You can have 5 people on the same training routine in the same diet plan and get very different results because of their sleep quality. How much REM sleep are you getting? How much deep sleep are you getting? The more REM sleep you get, the more deep sleep that you get, the more consistent your good sleep is, the better the results are going to be. Same diet, same training plan, different things. So you can say, well, how does they get on the same diet plan and the same training plan, but their sleep quality is so much different? The reason why is because your sleep quality also hinges on what you think. What are you thinking about before you go to bed? What are you thinking about in the morning? That's going to be the deciding factor. So having context, when things are happening to you in your life, and it's deeply frustrating, it's scary, it's discouraging, it can be all these negative feelings. There has to be something that grounds you. There has to be context. You have to be aware of what's happening. Because if you're not aware of it, you can't really respond adequately. You don't know what's happening. It's kind of like you'll watch like a military movie or something like that. It'd be like an action movie, and there's like an ambush of like some type of like army platoon or something like that, and they're being shot at, but they don't know where the shots are coming from. All they know is that they have team members that are getting hit. Somebody just got shot. You got to drag them to cover, all of this type of stuff, but you don't even know where cover is. You don't know where the shots are coming from. It's this panicky thing. You can't respond to the threat if you don't know where the shots are coming from. In our lives, we don't know where the shots are coming from. Not really. Knowing where the shots are coming from is the context. So it's very important to understand direction, because we got to get oriented. Right? That's why it's important to have that visual representation of that graph to really see these things. Most people are not really going to find this conversation to be sexy. The people typically who don't find this conversation to be sexy are the people who are going to struggle the most in life. Because there's this underestimation of how important that context is, how important that mindset work is. It's everything. It's the foundation of everything. Right? It's not just what you do that determines what you get. It's what you think while you're doing it. It's what you think before you do it. It's what you think after you do it. Right? Now, what is it, like 2 weeks ago? I talked about the things that sabotage your progress the most, pretty much guaranteeing failure. Number 1 was indecisiveness. Right? What was the second one? Y'all remember? Right? It was indecisiveness, and then what else was it? Y'all remember? Put it in the chat if y'all remember. Those of you in the Discord. Let's see who remembers. I spoke about both of these things like 2 weeks ago. One was indecisiveness. What was the second one? We'll see if y'all remember. Lack of commitment or softening of the commitment, right? not a lack of commitment necessarily, but a softening of it. There's hedging going on. Right? Hedging. So, for example, I'm gonna eat a raw vegan diet, but I'm gonna do this other thing. That but is the hedging. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna follow the plan, but that's the hedging. You're softening a commitment. Whatever the commitment was that you started with, if you soften that commitment, like, oh, I'm gonna go to bed 9 p.m. every day, then it becomes, well, 9 p.m. going to bed 9 p.m. every night is very difficult. Maybe I'll do like 9, 10, 10:30. That's a softening of the commitment. Once you start doing that, that's softening. That's going to eat into your progress big time. Because the softening eventually turns into indecisiveness. Because the more you soften the commitment, your results reflect the softening of the commitment. And then you're not sure if the plan is working. You don't know if you're going in the right direction. Right? So if you pick a plan and you're going in a particular direction, and then there's certain hits that you take when you go in that direction, and you're like, oh, I don't know. You start to get a little nervous, you get a little weary, and then you want to cut back in the other way. Prime example of this is you have a carbohydrate dominant diet, you're eating carbs, and then once you start increasing the amount of carbohydrates you eat, you may gain a couple pounds or something like this. And you go, no, I'm trying to lose weight. Maybe carbs are making me fast, and then you cut the carbs. Then you cut the carbs and the 2 pounds of weight loss go away, but you don't get any additional weight loss. Or you may get 1 more pound of weight loss. Right? So you're like, oh, the cutting the carbs works. And then you cut more and more of your carbs to the point you're just eating a bunch of fat and protein. Then what happens, you don't feel good. You're not sleeping well. You got brain fog. You're tired. It's difficult to train, whatever the case is. So you're like, oh, no, I feel like I got to add carbs. And we're back in the other direction. That indecisiveness destroys your progress. Right? So those 2 things, it was indecisiveness and it was a softening of the commitment. Right? It was like the number 2 things. And then number 3, which pretty much leads in with that, is diddling in the middle. It's number 3. And that's the video that I just last did. Diddling in the middle. That midline. Indecisiveness will keep you bouncing back and forth through that midline. Right? So that indecisiveness, essentially what that indecisiveness does is it causes you to do this. I'm going to go back to it. It causes you to do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You spend all your time around this midline. Right? You might touch resistance and then you're back here again. And then boom, 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 boom. So basically, you can live your life doing this. Diddling in the middle. Whoop. Then back up here. Whoop. And then back up here, right? So you could do that. There's not a confirmation of the direction. You need confirmation of direction. Right? That's super important. You need confirmation of direction. If you don't have that, you're going to keep swinging back and forth. And then you don't really get any meaningful progress because of that. It's good to have the flexibility to be able to change your mind, but if you change your mind too much, it's going to stagnate you in your life. You're not going to gain or lose a significant amount of weight. You're not really going to build a significant amount of muscle mass. You're not going to build a significant level of income or whatever the case your goal is. Doesn't matter what it is. But the thing is that when you pick a direction and you're dead set on a direction, you go through all the emotions. So when your emotions change, it's very important to be skeptical about changing your direction. So in another group coaching call, if y'all remember, what did I talk about? Having a hedge against your impulses, your emotions. Right? The hedge against your emotions is technical analysis. You have to have a technical thought process and then lean into the technical thought process when you're experiencing the emotions. So there's going to be all of this emotional turbulence, but the direction has to maintain. If the emotional turbulence is then altering your direction up and down is going to destroy your progress. Right? So you have to hedge against that emotional turbulence and volatility with maintaining direction. Now, again, this is a thing you can put on the graph. Right? This is a thing you can put on the chart. So if we go back here, and I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this chart. The reason why is because this is everything right here. This right here is one of the most important things I can tell y'all. Because from your starting line, you're going to do this, 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 this. Right here, you're going to experience these ups and downs, these ebbs and flows, and that's going to feel emotionally different throughout the journey. Now, if we look at this, this looks like up and down, up and down, up and down, but look at the direction. The direction is unbroken. Right? Still the same direction. We started here. Right? Hold on a second. So we got the line. And we started here. Where's it? Where's that line tool? I'm trying to figure this line tool thing out. That's not working either. Can I even do that? I want to draw a line. Oh, that's why. That's not the right line tool. I'm still trying to figure this thing out. Okay, anyways, I'm going to do it with the pen then. The direction is in one direction. No matter the ups and downs, still same direction. Right? So this is what I mean about maintaining direction. So the way that you maintain direction is you can plot out your life and you plot out higher highs and lower highs. So basically you have these ebbs and flows like this, right? And you have to track the highs and the lows. So you know you're maintaining direction when your highs are higher and your lows are higher. Now, if you're getting lower highs and lower lows, you're not maintaining direction. So then you got to course correct. All right. So the chart with the lines in the middle and the resistance and the starting line and all that type of stuff, that is the technical thought process I was talking about, right? That's the technical analysis that I was talking about. That technical analysis is a roadmap. That's what's going to keep you focused. When you're experiencing situations, just real pulled by these emotions. And so you're going to have some type of sturdiness. You're going to have a little bit of resistance to just being yanked all over the place by your emotions. So I'll put together a diet plan for people sometimes, a lot of the times, or put together a training plan. And they say, well, can I do this? What about this? Can I have this? Can I do that? Can I? And it's like, you can, but just understand all this negotiating and all this softening and wanting to pivot, this is going to damage you. So I wrote the plan a specific way. If you stick to that plan as rigidly as possible, your results are going to be better more often than not. I set your plan up like that for a reason. Right? When I put together a plan, whether it be a training plan, diet plan, whatever the case is, I do it through a technical analysis, and I have certain rules that I follow. And when you follow those rules, you typically will get the results that you want more often than not. By the way, you can also do this on a graph with your blood sugar numbers. Right? If you're getting like a lot of instability like this in your numbers, one of the best things that you can do is reduce the diversity. Right? So you have hedges. So for example, carbohydrates and fats, they can hedge against each other. So people are like, well, I'll do half carbohydrates and half fat. Well, when you do half carbohydrates and half fat, you're not picking a side. So you can get really good results from cutting all of your fat, from cutting most of your fats, like 90% of them, to the point where your diet is like 10-15% fat. or even 5% fat. And then you can do one where like only like maybe 5% or whatever of your diet is carbs. When you cut one and really put the emphasis on the other, you're reducing the hedging. That's what that is. Right? Now, basically for me, I err on the side of maximizing for carbohydrates. Basically, if you have a carbohydrate dominant diet, you basically train your body to be really good at adapting towards carbohydrate metabolism. And this has very favorable outcomes for your blood sugar. If you cut all your carbohydrates out, what you do is you decondition your body's ability to be able to handle the carbohydrates and the glycemic load. Right? So you'll have like your keto influencers and stuff, and they'll eat like 5 grapes and their blood sugar will shoot up to like 400. And they're like, oh my God, carbohydrate. See, this is why you avoid fruit. This is why I don't eat fruit, because they throw my blood sugar numbers up to the moon. It's like, well, because you deconditioned yourself by cutting all your carbohydrates out. There was a fight that you could have fought, which is leaning into the difficulty with the carbohydrates, but you chose to cut out the carbs and run from that battle instead and just eat the fats, and this is what happened. If you run from the fight enough, eventually it's going to make it even more difficult to have the fight when you have no choice but to have it. It's kind of like if there's a bully in your life, and every time this bully sees you, they put their hands on you, they take your lunch money, they harass you. So now you got a pair of binoculars out all the time, and you're always scoping out an area to see where the bully is so you can avoid them as much as possible. But eventually in life, you'll run into a situation where there is no way to avoid the bully. That bully is now governing your life, even as you avoid them. That bully becomes the center of your life. Everything, every direction you take is centered around avoiding the bully. And because you never had the fight, you're not good at having the fight, and you're not prepared to have the fight. So when that fight eventually shows up on your doorstep, it is going to be a lot harder to have than if you would have decided to have that fight earlier. Right? This is the reason why avoiding bullies is not a solution. It never really is. Avoiding fights generally is not really a good idea on principle, right? Certain fights you can't avoid. And it's important to know which ones you can avoid and which ones you can't. Because sometimes it's not worth it to avoid it. Right? So you have to filter out which ones you should lean into and which ones you shouldn't through analysis. You need that against the emotional traumas and the emotional turmoil. Because the technical analysis gives you context. So you know where the shots are coming from. So if you want to return fire, you can do so. Because you know that you're able to shoot in the right direction because you know where the shots are coming from. If you don't know where they're coming from, this leads to paralysis and fear to the point where you duck behind cover and you're terrified to move. All right? Let me catch up with y'all right quick in the comments. I get lots of your notifications. Maybe it was the don't diddle in the middle. Yeah, I haven't watched it yet. I joined via Discord and cannot see video. Do I have to join another way? Uh-oh. You can't see my video. You're probably watching on your phone or something like that. And maybe you got to jump out and come back in. Not quite sure. Would the ability to push against resistance be due to discipline? If so, is discipline built into steps as we go, or is it innate in its entirety? So, discipline is not really a thing you have or don't have. Discipline is like people are not, so human beings are disciplined by default. It just depends on how long you're going to be disciplined for and what your incentive for demonstrating that discipline is. Discipline is a strong governance over impulse control. I mean, it's essentially is what discipline is. You have people who, like, let's say, they're couch potatoes. They're sedentary. They ride the couch. They're real disciplined about eating their favorite bag of chips and watching their favorite TV show. They're really disciplined about it. They always make time out of their day to say yes to the couch, the potato chips, and Netflix. That's a form of discipline. right? It is. It's a form of discipline. People say, oh, it's a lack of discipline. It's not a lack of discipline because you're choosing. You're choosing that specific bag of potato chips. You're choosing that TV show at that time and to sit on that couch. That's a choice. Just because the choice may feel easy for you to do doesn't mean that it's a lack of discipline. Because that cuts the other way. You can have a person where they need to take more rest days from the gym. They need to take more rest days from training. But they're totally addicted to training. So taking rest days is very difficult to do. God forbid they need to take 2-3 days off from training in a row. Like 3 days of no training, it can be really difficult. They can make up their mind, I'm going to not train for 3 days. And then by the second day, they're already back in the gym. They were only able to take off 1 or 2, but they couldn't take off the third one. Because they're so addicted to training, they need to do it. They can't stay out of the gym. So you could be like, oh, that person who's always consistently going to the gym, oh, they're really disciplined. Yeah, but if they made the decision to take the 3 days off and they're not able to take the 3 days off, that's actually a lack of discipline. So it's important to understand what discipline actually is and what it isn't. Discipline is the ability to control impulse control. How to say no to your impulses. It could be the impulse to train. It could be the impulse to break your diet plan. It could be the impulse to eat the bag of potato chips. It could be the impulse to not go to bed at 9 o'clock and instead to go to bed at 9:30 or 10. Discipline is the ability to say no very consistently to your impulses and stay on track with your plan, whatever you set your plan to be. Right? People are not really like inherently lazy. People are not really inherently undisciplined. It's context dependent. Right? Like, people are sedentary because the context that they're operating off of allowed them to be that way. You're not dumb or something's wrong with you or, you know, you're a bad person. It's not that. You have experienced certain things in your life, and on that chart that you've diddled in the middle a little too long. And the next thing you know, you're starting line, and then you're at your starting line, and you never move from the starting line. And if you don't move from the starting line, you end up getting a lower low instead of a higher high. Right? But depending on the context you're operating under, it's easy for that to happen. And then some people, with the context they're operating under, that will never happen. Some people, they are so focused on progress and excellence that they can't spend any meaningful amount of time in the middle. So they're constantly butting their head up against resistance. These are often really hardworking people. These are people who are really stressed and tired all the time. These are people who battle with anxiety constantly, and they're always struggling. These are people who are deathly afraid of going back to the midline. I give you an example of this too. So you can have some people where like they grew up in abject poverty. They were poor as a kid. As a kid, they had to skip meals because their parents couldn't afford to give them food, like for dinner at night. So they went to bed hungry. They remember this as a kid. They slept on a mattress on the floor. There was no hot water in the shower. Sometimes, their parents couldn't afford to keep the light bill on, right? So, the food in the fridge went and spoiled, so they couldn't really keep fresh produce in the fridge and all this type of stuff, right? Just poverty, crazy poverty, right? And then as they grew up, the trauma of poverty caused them to pursue money and labor very aggressively. They were willing to do anything and work as hard as needed to be in order to make some money and get out of that poverty. To the point where now fast forward to them being adult, they're workaholics. They're obsessed with work. They're obsessed with progress. They're obsessed with making more money. And the context of dealing with that poverty as a child can cause them to be extremely wealthy as an adult, to the point where they're just hoarding money. They make a ton of money, they're always working, and they're deathly afraid to spend money. So they make money and they hoard it like it's gonna integrate. They don't take time off from work, to to the point where like they ignore their kids, it destroys their marriage, you know, it can ruin personal relationships, all this type of stuff, because they're always at work and they're always pursuing money. And you can say, wow, that person's really disciplined. Kinda. I mean, maybe. The only way to really determine that is what impulses are they saying no to? Because that may look like discipline to you, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's discipline. It's a trauma response. All that hard work and all that money making could just be a trauma response. In the same way, it can work the other way with poverty. It works both ways. A person who is extremely wealthy and works really hard is no better than a person who does the opposite. It's just different traumas, and it's all context dependent. How do you manage the fear of success? Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, so basically, success is whatever you define it as. Success is a thing that is only left up to your interpretation. There's not really a such thing as a like objective success. It's just whatever you want it to be. So if you have a fear of success, well, how have you defined success? And how far is that from your norm, from your midline? So if you're going to define success, you have to define your starting line and you have to define your midline. Along with success requires you to break resistance and reach a higher high. The fear could be coming from how far away from your midline you have to move and how much effort you have to put into breaking resistance. And breaking resistance can be a very traumatic experience because of the rejection. We hate rejection. Oh, rejection is humiliating. It's embarrassing. Rejection feels like failure. Not moving off of your starting line doesn't feel like failure, but getting rejected off of resistance feels like failure. And if you get rejected off of your resistance enough, it could feel so bad, it could be a trauma to the point where you no longer retest resistance because of the pain of rejection, and that pain produces fear. Your midline has a gravitational pull. Your midline can cause you to gravitate from your starting line to your midline. And then as you move away from your midline and up towards resistance, as you get closer and closer to resistance, your midline will start to pull you back. It's a tether. The point of control. So not only do you need to break resistance to push against resistance, you have to push away from your midline. So you have to charge through something and pull away from something at the same time. It's a lot of effort, so it makes it real hard. However you define success, that's your higher high. So you have to have a clear understanding of what your higher high is and how close or how far is that from your line of resistance. So you have to plot that out. Let's say within the last 10 years of your life, the lowest amount of money you've made annually was $60K. From your starting line, it was $60K, and then your midline is like $90K, let's say. Resistance is $120K or $110K, however much you want to decide. Your higher high could be $150K, $150,000 annually. That could be your higher high. Your higher, you've never experienced your higher high before. You've never experienced it, ever. It's completely unfamiliar to you. It's uncharted territory. You move from 60K, you hit Let's say 90K. 90K feels good. It feels comfortable. But if you stay at 90K for too long, you can drift below that 90K and end up at like 80, 70K. If you stay at that 80 or 70K for too long, you mess around and end up at 60K. And 60K will feel like poverty. It'll feel real bad. You move back up to your midline, and it can feel like you've reached a higher high just because you reach back to your midline and hit that 90K again. And at your midline, you can afford to pay your bills. You can live comfortably. You can sit on the couch if you want. It's not poverty. It's not your success. It's not resistance either. But it's maintainable. It's comfort. It's familiar. You did a lot of work to get to that midline from your starting line. And there's a lot of pain at resistance. So if you're going to decide to pursue resistance, which is up there around like that 90K, I mean, around that 110, 120K or something like that, whatever you define. Well, the decision to move from your midline to resistance, you have to embrace a lot of pain and discomfort and fear. None of us are exempt from that. None of us. Your higher high is even more terrifying because you've never been there before. You'd like to get there, but you don't know what you're in for when you get there. It's completely unfamiliar. That's where the fear is from. So, fear of success is very common for that reason. The question is, what do you fear more? Do you fear failure more than you feel success? That's the question. Which one do you fear more, and then why? We all have a fear of success to one degree or another. We also have a fear of failure. It just depends on which one is greater, and whichever one is greater, it's important to understand why. So there's a little bit of soul searching to do in order to figure that out. By the way, real quick note, I really appreciate people, every once in a while, people call me out in my comments. They say, you say right a lot. It's annoying. Right? And I'm like, fair point. It makes me more aware of that so I can get over my verbal tick. Like today, I think I've did a pretty good job of managing that verbal tick. No ums, no right, all that. I think I did a pretty good job of that. I'm under a lot of stress right now. And have been under a lot of stress, right? However, I've done a pretty good job managing that. Because awareness. People tune into my comments, and I read the comments. And I take the criticisms, and I use the criticisms to refine my behavior. So when you criticize me, I don't really get defensive about it. What I do is I run it through my filter of technical analysis. It helps me to find the gaps. However, if your criticism is wrong, I may interrogate you about your criticism. And if your criticism is not well thought out, it's going to be very uncomfortable for you. That's generally how I deal with criticism. It gets put through a filter. If it's legit, it helps me to improve. I'll take it to heart and work on it. However, if there's no basis for it, I'm going to interrogate you about it. I'm going to seek for more answers behind the criticism to see how well thought out it was. So basically, I attach you to your criticisms. That's essentially what I do. I don't really get defensive necessarily. I don't really, one thing I don't do by principles, I don't defend myself. That's the thing I don't do. Because basically, and the reason why I'm not protective of my ego, being protective of your ego is very dangerous. If you're very protective of your ego, you will never be able to break resistance. And the reason why is because of the rejection. Rejection is very damaging to the ego. If you put a lot of priority on protecting your ego, you will never put yourself in a position to be rejected, or you're going to be very hesitant towards doing so. And that is what drives a lot of the fear of success. You see how I brought that around? Folks who are new to the channel, they're like, well, this is not about diet. No, it's not. Before my work as a nutritionist, my whole thing was mindset and self-development. Mastering your internal psychology. That was my first thing. Everything was built on top of that. That's the base layer. Mindset and self-development. So yeah, the defensiveness and the protection of your ego, it's a cage. Your ego doesn't matter. It's not that important. Right? I don't put a whole lot of value on my ego necessarily. I don't. And it makes me able to pursue resistance that implies and requires rejection. If you're a man who you're very protective of your ego, you can see a gorgeous woman who you're enamored with and you won't approach her. Because you don't want your ego to be damaged if she rejects you. And what's going to happen is, as a man, you're going to be lonely. You're going to be frustrated. Because that fear of success is basically approaching a woman and talking to her and risking being rejected. Right? If she rejects you, you got booted off of resistance. If it doesn't, well, basically you've reached your higher high in that way. So you do have to have a bit of an ego death, which a lot of the times life forces us to have an ego death. You just have to shed yourself of it. Your ego or whatever, that's like a thing that just exists in your head. It's not a real tangible thing. It's not. You can say, well, what about people who have like low self-esteem? Low self-esteem and your ego, they're like different things. Because you can feel so strongly attached to your ego that what looks like low self-esteem is a fear of rejection. It's really what that is. And a fear of rejection is because you put a premium of excessive value on your ego. So people may say, well, what about the egotistical men who constantly approach women and they don't take like no for an answer? What is that? It's like, well, they don't have the fear of rejection. They're pursuing a higher high. They just picked a different path. In the same way, any person who chooses to lean into resistance, well, they're leaning into resistance because they're trying to hit a higher high. You can either choose to pursue your higher high or you cannot. Right? Up or down. There is no other thing. It's either up or down. To get to your higher high, you necessarily need to go and break through resistance. You do it or you don't. Right? You can pursue your higher high, but you can do it in a very toxic way. You can, but you're still pursuing it. Right? So this is why, like, I don't call, oh, this person's lazy, or oh, this person's really hardworking, or, you know, this is what success is generally. It's not. It's highly contextual. It's very individualized. Success for me may not look like success for you. Success for you doesn't look like success for me. We all define it differently. Our personal preferences in our life are just that. They're personal. They're not like things that objectively exist outside of us. They're just in our head. Rejection feels bad because of how it feels to you in your head. Right? Think about, like, if you put your money into, like, you're a trader or you're an investor. The more money you put into a trade or the more money you put into an investment, the rejection is going to feel worse the more money you put. It's still rejection. The only difference is the dollar amount you put. And the dollar amount you put is subordinate to how much money you actually have. And the more of your capital you put into that into that investment or into that trade, the success is going to feel incredible, but the rejection is going to feel just as bad. And when you put more in, the rejection is enhanced the more you put in. This is the reason, this is the whole fear of success thing. This is what that comes from. It's a very high stakes game, but it's a high stakes game you have to play if you want to reach your higher high. That's the kicker in life, right? If you have a higher high, there's going to be pain. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to feel great. It isn't. I was just thinking you brought the subject around perfectly, yeah? I've had this conversation with myself way before I had it with y'all. So that's why it sounds formatted like that on the stream. This is not the first time I've had this conversation. So when I take time off from the live streams or whatever the case is, I'm taking the time off so I can refine the thought process. Because if it's not refined, you're not going to get a whole lot out of it when you're sitting here with me. So it's a part of the service. So if I step away, just know when I do come back, it's going to benefit you. That's typically how it works. It's about pure lifestyle. Food is just one part of it, yeah? And you do a wonderful job speaking the truth of it all. I appreciate that. Mark, by the way, appreciate you for joining the tribe too. Welcome to the community. Is it easier to break the higher level goals in increments? For example, if someone had 50 pounds to lose, should the first high level of the 25-pound loss, should it be 25-pound loss, or should it be the entire goal of 50 pounds? It's always going to be incremental, whether you set the increments or not. Either you set the increments deliberately or they will be set for you. But either way, they will be set. This is the thing we do not have control over. This is what I mean about however much control you think you have over your life, you're overestimating how much control you have. Right? So that's why I said on the chart, when I drew the line, and it's like the up and down, up and down, up and down, the ebbs and flows are the increments. Right? If you've ever like gained or lost weight, you realize you can be up 2 pounds one day, down 1 pound another, and then the next day you're up 3 pounds, and then the next day you're down 2, and all up and down, up and down, up and down, but it moves in a particular direction. Right? So the increments are gonna they're gonna be there by default. However, I would advise that you pick and choose what increments you highlight. So if your goal is to lose 100 pounds, then yeah, you can do like, I'm gonna do my first 25, I'm gonna do my first 35, and then it's gonna, let's say you set an increment. First checkpoint is 35, next checkpoint is 50, next checkpoint is 65, next checkpoint is 70 or 75. You can even make ranges. So instead of a flat number, it could be a range. The first checkpoint is I want to drop anywhere from 25 to 30 pounds. Then the next one is I want to drop anywhere from 50 to 65. Then the next, right? So you can set a range. Ranges are a bit easier to stick to because it allows the ebbs and flows to be managed a lot more effectively. You give yourself some breathing room mentally. And it's all a mental and emotional exercise because all the things you have in your life, they go through this emotional filter. Do I like it, or do I strongly dislike it, or do I kind of dislike it? Where is it, right? So all of it is managing your emotions. Context, you need context to manage your emotions because you need to be aware of what's happening to you when it's happening so you're not ambushed by it. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if we get Miss Juju in the chat with us. Let's see. I appreciate folks in the public square tuning in and checking in on me. Because your boy Remsen been going through it. Let me tell you something. I've been at resistance for like a year. This has been going on for a long time. I experienced rejection in October. And then again in... Yeah, I got rejected pretty hard in October. I made a little rally, came back, January, got rejected again. Right? Now I'm retesting resistance again in April. Okay? That's essentially... I diddled in the middle a little bit. I'm not gonna lie. I diddled in the middle a little bit in February and April. Well, actually, no, that's not true. I didn't diddle in the middle. I didn't. Oh, kinda, not really. I almost did, but not really. When I say that, I'm like, well, actually, no, I didn't. Because I maintained the pressure, right? I still kept pushing away from my midline. I didn't get too comfortable. It's actually not true. So yeah, I'm back pushing up against resistance, and I realize I'm gonna have to do something that I haven't done in a really long time, or something that I've never done. Now the interesting thing I will tell you is I don't know what so basically in order to push through resistance, you either have to do a very easy or fairly easy thing very consistently and deal with the patience. You have to have a lot of patience. So for example, my rule about training. In resistance training, building muscle, you only really need about 60 to 90 minutes a week, training 2 to 3 times a week, right? Max effort on each set. Now, are you going to gain rapid muscle and strength doing this? Maybe, but the longer you do it, the gains happen a little slower. And the gains in muscle mass and strength at points when you follow a strategy like this can be real slow. I mean, painfully slow. Right? To the point where you feel like you're not even really building any muscle or anything. It feels slow. You're like, oh man, I feel like I need to train more. That's the impulse. If you feel like your muscle growth and gains have been flat and you're like, you start getting impatient because it feels flat. It may not necessarily be flat, but it feels that way. The numbers aren't moving fast enough. So you're like, well, maybe I need to train more. Maybe I need to do, instead of 2 training a week, maybe I do 3 to 4. Maybe I do 4 to 5. If you decide that you're going to go from 2 to 3 or you're going to go from 3 to 4, that's an impulse. That's an emotional impulse because you're getting impatient. So you think you need to add more work. That's an emotional impulse. It's a lack of discipline. And so basically you add the 4th day in your training, but the 4th day, it may work temporarily. You may get the needle moving again. You go, okay, so I just need to add 4 days. So now you just, we're on 4 days. But then 4 days runs flat. And you're like, man, what do? I guess I'll add a 5th day because adding a 4th one worked, right? And then you add a 5th day. And what happens when you add the 5th day? When you add the 5th day, you may get even more progress. But guess what happens? If you maintain the 5th day long enough, things start to go in the opposite direction. You start getting weaker. You're like, oh, uh-oh. Your sleep quality starts getting worse. This is where the frustration happens, by the way, because you gave into the impulse. You kept adding and adding, and then what happens? You're noticing a deterioration in your sleep quality, and now you feel like you're getting weaker because your performance is starting to decline. You're feeling way more fatigued than normal. You don't feel it immediately. This happens kind of like in your original impulse. It just ambushes you. So then you look back, you'd be like, I've been training 5 days. And maybe I need to back off a little bit and scale back to 4 days. And so you scale back to 4 days. So when you scale back to 4 days, it's like, okay, well, this doesn't feel as bad as 5 days. But you're still flat in your progress. And then the fatigue accumulates on you in the 4 days. Eventually, what's going to happen, you can't push to the 5 days because the 5 days you got rejected off of the 5 days. So now you're at the 4 days, and the 4 days you're just flat. The reason why you increased to 4 days is because you were running flat when you were just doing 3 days. You see what happens? Eventually, you end up at this point where you're back to training the 3 days where you originally were before. That's rejection. That's what that looks like. You bounced off, you went from 3 to 4 to 5. 5 was brutal, got rejected off of the 5. Now you're back down to the 3 days again. But if you would have just maintained the 3 days, eventually the plateau would break and then you start the gains. So a big part of breaking resistance is to not capitulate to your impulses up or down. You maintain your trajectory. You maintain your rules. 60 to 90 minutes a week, 2 to 3 training days. Max effort on each set. If you feel really fatigued, you don't feel like you've recovered, take another rest day. If you need to take 2 rest days in a row, take 2. If you need to take 3, take 3. You only grow from what you recover from. The training is not really what you get the growth from, it's the recovery. So if you need more rest days to enhance recovery, then take more rest days. When you stick to your rules, that's discipline. Sticking to your rules is the discipline. The discipline is the thing that gives you the edge to be able to break resistance. That's your edge. All right? This is how it works. Me telling you that, I'm able to tell you that because that is based on technical analysis. That is the thing that you hedge against your emotional impulses. The impatience. So I'm at a point now in my life where it's like, do I need to lean more into patience or more aggression? Pick one. Either you're going to have to be way more consistent with the things that you know work, or you're going to have to do something that is fundamentally different than what you've ever done before. That's the thing to figure out. However, one thing I know that does work is if you put in a tremendous amount of effort to break through resistance, if you get rejected, you're going to get rejected really hard. Because the effort you put, if that effort that you put in is not enough to break through, rejection is going to feel way worse. And the rejection will be so hard, you might end up back at your midline. However, if you exercise patience, you can press up against resistance enough. You press up against it, and then eventually it gives way. It may happen over a really long period of time, but the rejection is very minimal. But the pressure is constant. The only thing you need is patience. Either one. Patience requires more time. Aggression is a very risky gamble. You can break resistance sooner, or you can get rejected harder. It's a big gamble. So for me in my life, I had to make a choice. Now, the thing is, the things that are pressing on me right now the most, I can't fix these things with more aggression. I've tried that, and the rejection is harder. Also, the things that are pressing against me right now are not in my control. I don't choose those things. These are outside forces that are acting on me, but not just me exclusively. It's not just about me or my efforts. It's above me. The only thing that I can do is control my emotional impulses to it. So essentially what I'm going to have is a lot more patience. I'm going to have to be a lot more persistent, have a lot more patience. Let me see if I can, because I feel like I'm putting my head down. See if I can make a... Oh shoot, what was that? Oh, I hope I didn't break nothing. Make a little bit of an adjustment. I hope that didn't mess up my mic. Can y'all hear me clearly? I'd be terrified to move this mic and mess up my sound. The Divine Fempress, thank you. Let me check on the comments here. Anger is such a tough emotion to handle. That's true. Anger make you make mistakes. Aloha. What's going on? Good to see you. Good to see y'all in here. Am I the only one experiencing a bad connection? I don't know. I'm not. Maybe not. I mean, you know, I don't know. Y'all have to chime in the chat to see. But Juju, good to see you in here. Being dogmatic with a workout plan that doesn't support growth is a fine line to walk to, if that makes sense. Trying to figure out if I'm doing too much or too little can be a challenge too. Yeah, so that's why I say the rules, right? You know if you're putting a max effort into your set or not. It does not take a lot to build muscle mass. It doesn't. It doesn't take a whole lot of work to build muscle mass. Or it doesn't require a lot of work. It requires a very effective dosage. So when people are like, yeah, I train 7 days a week. I was like, because you don't train that hard. That's why you can do it 7 days a week. But if you do a max effort on each set, you're not going to be able to do 10 sets. That you can't produce that level of effort that consistently, repeatedly like that. You just can't. It's a physical limitation of human beings. You just can't. Right? You have to trust in the process. So basically what you do is, if you're trying to build muscle mass, you start with the minimal dosage of training. What is the least amount of work I can do to get growth? What's the least amount I can do? The least amount is 60 minutes a week. The most is 90. It's typically how it works. Rather than adding more workouts or adding more sets, the best thing you can do is increase the output of your intensity that you put in within that 60 to 90 minutes. If you cannot increase your output within that 60 to 90 minutes, that is your threshold. That's your cap. So that's the thing about it, right? You just have to trust in the process that when you are training, you're pushing it hard enough in order to get the progress. So it's pretty easy to figure out, but you're not quite sure. And the reason why you may not be quite sure is because you're highly motivated and a bit impatient. Right? Right, with Karen, you know, look, sometimes the progress is real slow. It happens, but God, is it slow. Lord, we want our results faster. Sometimes getting them faster comes at a risk that's too high, making it's not worth it. Because easy come, easy go. Right? So sometimes, like, yeah, patience, we just have to be patient. You have to be real consistent and real repetitive and real patient. Hold on 1 second, y'all. I'm going to open it up a little bit, actually. Those of you in the Discord and the public square voice chat, y'all can actually turn y'all mic on and talk to me on voice chat if you want. So y'all can ask me questions live. Because I've been talking this whole time. Y'all just been listening. So we got to kind of get a little participation in here right quick before we jump. Yes, I wanted more weight loss, but what I got was almost more valuable to dropping cholesterol, fasting blood sugar, and blood pressure. That's right. And when you improve your pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol, that type of stuff, it makes the weight loss easier moving forward. Patience, young grasshopper. True. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get into another level of consistency, right? There's gonna be some simplification, and there's gonna be a lot more consistency on my end. It's gonna be real repetitive. So I'll let y'all know when I figure that out. Y'all probably gonna see it in real time too. When y'all see my things that I'm doing, y'all be like, oh, we see what he's talking about. We're moving into spring. We're about to get a lot more sun exposure. Like Superman, the sun gives us all of our power. So one of the most beneficial things that you could do here in the spring and summer is increase sun exposure. All right. If you got high blood pressure, high blood sugar, increase sun exposure. If you've got allergies, increase sun exposure. Gut health issues, increase sun exposure. Hormonal imbalances, anxiety, depression, sun exposure. Sun exposure leads to higher levels of vitamin D synthesis inside the body. Vitamin D is a steroidal hormone. That extra vitamin D, that sun exposure, that leads to more fat metabolism, that leads to faster muscle growth, that leads to better oxygen saturation, a better hormonal profile, all that. If you're a man with low testosterone, that increased sun exposure will raise your free testosterone and your total testosterone. That increased sun exposure will reduce prolactin, which is really important for reduction in man boobs if you got them, or moobs for short. That increased sun exposure will improve your pancreatic health, your blood sugar, helps to reverse diabetes, all that type of stuff. But that sun exposure's got to be sun to skin. Right? So we may have to take the sleeves off. All right, we got to get more of a tan. All right. So these are things to keep in mind. Also, if you're skinny, you want to gain weight, build muscle, same thing. That sun exposure is a big deal. All right, y'all. I think I'm going to leave it there, right? Good conversation today. Appreciate everybody for tuning in with me and joining in. All right. Real quick, do some housekeeping. If you're not already in the community, you value the conversations, join the community. Right? Upgrade, become a Tribe by Noir community member if you're in the public square. If you're not already in the public square, definitely do so to get in. All right. And I will see you on the other side in the next one.